Okay, we are live. Reed, thanks for that reminder. Okay, well, thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate the opportunity to have those that have worked, spent a lot of hours and a lot of energy on this project, be able to talk about the future of Hillcrest Park. For those that may not be aware, the question was asked, Hillcrest is located at 650 East, 1400 South. Landmarks, though, it's just south of University Parkway, essentially directly south of the mall, kind of the east side, RC Willie, if you will. But yeah, appreciate you being here. Appreciate a lot of people spending a lot of time doing this, and you as citizens spending your evening understanding better the project, providing input. Couple kind of ground rules so that we can jump right into discussion. Your mics are muted unless you've been made a co-host because you might be presenting tonight. But feel free to use the chat function, which you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, as well as raising your hand when we get into the question and answer. At our webpage where you found this link, orem.org/Hillcrest Park, it gives you instructions on how to raise your hand and has some images that will help if it gets to that, if you choose to do that. But feel free to throw your questions in the chat. We'll get to those questions and we'll read as many comments and questions as we have time for. We will close this meeting at 6:20 to allow us to jump into our 6:30 meeting. If you're seeking more information, have more questions, or are just still interested in the project or in further discussion on the project, we invite you to jump onto our next meeting at 6:30, where we'll continue our discussion with new neighbors. With that, I will turn the time over to Bren Bybee, our Assistant City Manager, who will kind of give some further background to this meeting, and then we'll turn the time over to those that will be presenting tonight. But again, to all of the citizens there, thanks so much for joining and for your interest in this project. Bren?
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, we're super excited about this project. Again, I'll just give a little bit of background and introduce some of those that'll be speaking with us in kind of a panel format tonight. The city acquired the 9.3 acres from the school district at Hill, that was the former Hillcrest Elementary, at the end of 2020. And previous to that, the city helped maintain just 1.85 acres of that property. So this is a really big improvement to our overall park services that we provide here in Orem. Up to this point, we've taken just a couple of concept iterations to our mayor and council, that with the intent to try to bring into account aspects of the city's parks master plan that was adopted a few years ago, try to make sure that we're incorporating some of our standard park features in this design that we have at all of our parks, explore what maybe would be unique and kind of up and coming in the park industry. We also tried to take into account where we're already seeing demand in our park programming. And we got kind of initial ideas of what our council has been hearing from at least some of the neighborhood or neighbors early on. We looked at different options and iterations of what we might do with the building. And then also just ultimately wanted to try and have at least something of a framework to see what's viable and what would it cost if we started to put in a lot of these features that we've shared through the two concepts that have been shared over the last couple of weeks. So on with us is Mark Vlasic, Lisa Benson, and Hugh Holt with Landmark Design. Landmark Design is our landscape architect consultant, and they've helped many cities all around the state go through similar park design processes. And then we've also got Joe Smith and Scott Smith from Method Studio, and they are building architects, and they helped look at the existing building structurally, looked at the different phases of construction that occurred at the Hillcrest Elementary building over time, and helped us identify the portion of the building that is the most recent portion, built in 2004, and look at the building kind of from a structural engineer perspective. In terms of staff from the city, we have Carl Hurst, our rec director, And so if there's questions about park programming, we'll seek his help. We have Ryan Clark and Jason Bench from Development Services and Planning and Zoning. So if there's questions about parking or zoning, they can help out. We have Chris Shirky and Reed Price from Public Works who can speak to specific parks maintenance type questions. And then of course we have many of our city council on with us and our city manager, Jamie Davidson. So far I've seen Mayor Brunst and council members Lamson and Peterson and Councilmember Spencer. And I'm sure we'll have others trickling in as they can. So with that introduction, I'll turn the time over to Lisa Benson with Landmark to give kind of an initial presentation of that kind of highlights the concepts, and then we'll give a few minutes to Mayor Brunst to show the concept design that he has put together as recently as today. So with that, Lisa, turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Bren, and thank you everyone again for your time tonight and for letting us present these concepts to you. I wanted to start out by emphasizing that the concepts that you might have seen on the website and that we're going to present tonight are very preliminary concepts. They're exploratory in nature, as Bren mentioned, to see what types of amenities we may be able to fit here, and also kind of help putting a cost framework to the site. But also, as Bren mentioned, they do have a bit of a background and a history with what has come out of previous planning work and also feedback from the community through that previous survey and what staff is hearing, which is really important to have kind of a bit of a background going into a park design. So let me share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see that? All right. So the first concept that we're looking at is retaining part of the building. As Bren mentioned, we looked at different options for the building, and the option that seemed to make the most sense was to retain the newest portions of the building, which are the gym and some of the other newer facilities. And I'll have Method Studios kind of go into the detail on that in just a minute. But this option basically retains part of the school for indoor recreation purposes and other areas that are helpful for community meetings and other types of community events. So this is the footprint of the remaining building, and in front of that we have a large flexible open lawn area, and this is intended for community events, which could be like farmers markets or different types of events like that. Just a flexible open lawn area where the community can gather. On the back side of the building would be kind of raised planters with trees and plantings, and then some flexible seating back there. It could be game tables, other types of uses like that to kind of create some fun, flexible use outside of the building. On the west side here, there's a drive that goes up the west side of the property and connects into that commercial area on the adjoining property, just to help get a better flow between the properties. And that concept is continued in both of those. In the northwest corner of the property is a well house for the city's water system and an adjacent detention basin to help retain stormwater on site and also assist with the functions of that well house building. And then you can see on the west side of the site, the primary use here is the pickleball court area. And this concept incorporates 14 total pickleball courts. The idea behind this was to create a facility, kind of a pickleball facility that's large enough that you could host tournaments if you wanted to, kind of create that community and regional draw. So there are 14 courts with a pavilion that's associated with that area. It's surrounded around the perimeter with a walkway that has exercise stations located along the walk, and then smaller pavilions with picnic tables. There are two connections that would be worked out with UDOT to connect north to University Mall and to the transit station over there. And then the existing pavilion and restroom locations are retained for pricing purposes in our concept, we priced it out as replacing the restroom and pavilion, but those could obviously be refurbished to save a little bit of cost on that. We've co-located tot lot and older children's playgrounds here so that it makes it a little easier for parents to keep an eye on all of their kids at once if they're playing in this area. And there's an access along here. This entryway is kind of a linear entry feature with a bosque of trees, and it has a covered table tennis area at each end. And then in between, in crushed stone, would be, again, some movable seating and chairs. And to the west of that is a hammock park here and a nature playground area here. So it's more like there are different kinds of equipment than you would see in a typical play area. And I can show you an image of that in a moment. The intent with the hammock park in talking with staff was just to provide the poles and not to provide the hammocks themselves. So if anybody wanted to use this facility, they would bring their own hammock and hang it up for the time that they're hanging out in the park. And to the west of the pickleball courts are a couple of permanent 9-square structures. And obviously most of what everybody's seeing right now are kind of the PVC temporary structures. And this option, we're looking at proposing some permanent facilities there with some adjacent seating areas to view that activity. And then I'll turn the time over here to Method to talk about the architecture.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. We looked at the building in a variety of different ways. We looked, the building basically had several components where the original was built in 1953. There was a classroom wing that was built in 1959. Media Center was actually built in 1976. And then there's a new addition which included a new gym, a kitchen area, and a new classroom that was built in 2004. And when we were looking at the whole building, it made sense to keep the newer parts, but the older parts, we felt that there was a little bit too much seismic upgrade and a little bit, the costs weren't coming in to seismically upgrade the whole building. And so we picked the parts that had kind of the seismic upgrade. There will be a little bit needed for the media center, but we felt that that was such a kind of a nicer space as well that we could keep that and use it for possible community classes or events like that. And so this new, or this section that we're keeping is approximately 17,300 square feet. Approximately 2,800 of that will need some seismic upgrade. And so we included a couple costs here that would talk to that seismic upgrade. We did just a seismic to connect the roof to the walls. And then these are all rough estimates from a structural engineer that was able to look at the building. $42,000 possibly to do that. And then if we wanted to do the full seismic upgrade, which means like, I think there's some CME walls that would need to be dug into and rebar added to those. That's an additional, $100,000 to do that. So 140 for that seismic upgrade. We also looked at what it would cost to demo the rest of the building. There's a wing here and then the initial part of the building. And so based on kind of a rough square footage cost, we thought between 100 and 140,000 to do that. We also looked at costs that it would take to, since we're cutting part of the building off, we will need to reskin or put a new exterior on the building. And so we added a rough envelope cost to that, around $60 to $70 per square foot. So that's another 140 to 163,000. And then if we're keeping the building, we'll want to kind of upgrade it, with finishes, architectural finishes, new flooring, possibly new paint, some walls that we may want to revise depending on the function of the space. And so we added a cost to that around 25 to 50,000 per square foot. or sorry, $25 to $50 per square foot, which came up with another $430 to $860, depending on the level of finish that you needed. We did a quick parking study, and I think Lisa might go into parking a little bit further with this, understanding the needs of the park compared to the needs of the building. But we did a quick study on just if we kept this portion of the building, how many stalls of parking is required by code. And I think we came up to about 70 stalls were needed. There could be a reduction that the city gives us where we could reduce that to maybe 52 stalls. And this would be just for the building. So the additional stalls needed for the park would be added to this. So the total cost for this building, we were looking around 760 to 1,000 to 1.4 million just to keep the building. Compare that to I think Brent asked if we wanted to rebuild this building, just have a building that basically had the same amenities in here. I believe we were looking closer to around $3 to $4 million to do that. I'd have to do the math again, but that's on rough magnitude what it would cost to build that if the building wasn't there at all. Joe, do you have anything else to maybe add to that?
No, that's a great summary, Scott. I would just add that, we looked, as you mentioned early on, we looked at a number of scenarios of keeping various portions of the additions that were added to the building over time. And so for this concept, balancing the amount of functional building with cost and remaining, leaving open space, enough open space remaining to still keep this primarily functional for park space was an important criteria that we were looking at.
And I think the parts of the building that we're planning to keep lent themselves really well to a community type center. We've got the open gym, we've got some classroom space. Yeah, you can kind of see some of the pictures that Lisa will go through, and all in pretty good shape. This is looking in the gym. This is the stage there. So there's opportunities for performances or small, community theater or choir performances, things like that. Kitchen that they used for the elementary school that could possibly be used for community lunches or for cooking classes and things like that. And then this.
Oh, Scott.
Yeah.
This is Mayor. I was just going to mention the kitchen. The Alpine School District left a lot of things in the kitchen. They have freezers in there. They have cookware in there. They have heating units. I mean, it is a full-scale restaurant type kitchen in very good condition. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's correct.
In addition to the kitchen and the gym, there's also, we felt that the media center might be a nice amenity to keep. There's a lot of nice wood shelving in there. There's this fireplace that's shown, and it's in fairly good condition. And I think we felt that this could be used as a community room in some sense. Whether it's classes or gatherings, meetings, things like that. This is a nice space for that. Yeah, more of the media center here.
Okay, and looking at this option where we retain part of the building, as was mentioned, kind of keeping as much of the site for recreation as possible was really important for the staff and for the council. And we looked at the previous option where we kept the entire building and the parking that would be required for that, and it took almost half the site. Whereas this option with its parking takes about 13% of the site. And you can see the area outlined in the red dash is kind of the parking area that's required just to meet the building needs in this option. And as you can see, we did also look at the parking that would be needed for the rest of the site. And with the building and the site together, we estimated that we need about 146 stalls. If we could get that reduced down to 128, that would help but we right now are providing 113 stalls. So just to meet the parking needs that with what we're showing on site, we still actually do need to fit in some, a few more parking stalls to make sure that the site's not underparked. So looking at the second concept, this option looked at removing the school entirely and devoting the entire 9.3 acres to recreation and of course a little bit to the utility use, of course. So we still have that well house and detention up in the northwest corner. 2 parking lots, one on the south end, one on the west side. And you can see that the whole center area is now dedicated to recreation, and that's where that pickleball tournament facility is located. And this option includes 16 courts, whereas the other option had 14. So we have a restroom and pavilion associated with the pickleball courts. The entries, we have a south entry here. It could be some sort of overhead structure. Again, like I said, this design isn't really detailed defined. This is kind of overall conceptual, but this entryway also has the table tennis that are under covered pavilions here. The west entry to this area has a grove of trees and a plaza. And again, this perimeter walk has kind of these exercise stations that are shown in this turquoise color, some smaller pavilions here around the perimeter, and that connects to the loop perimeter pathway that goes around the rest of the park as well. And then within this loop pathway system, we have game tables located kind of in the little island areas between those 2 sidewalks, so that whole perimeter area is activated. We also have, again, one of the permanent 9 square structures here in the northeast corner of the circle, just some open lawn areas here to watch the pickleball courts, or just have some open areas to play. In this option, we included the Hammock Park kind of towards the front of the park. And I know that was a concern of some people that we may have issues with, people kind of camping out in this area instead of just recreating there. So this option brings that use to the front where more eyes can kind of stay on that area. There's a raised berm area here, a lawn area to again kind of watch some of the activities around, or just for kids to roll down the hillside, which just a simple activity that can be really enjoyable for kids. There are 2 connections again to the University Mall and to University Parkway, getting across there to the transit station. This option includes a covered outdoor sports court area, and this doesn't have to be just for basketball courts. It can be kind of a flexible use area that can be used. It can be shaded and maybe used in inclement weather. So you have a few more options than just kind of an open court area with that. Again, the existing restrooms and pavilion would be replaced, and we have again the co-located playground areas for children and for older kids. A nature playground area here located in the northeast corner, and then another permanent 9 square option here. And this one is in crushed stone, and then another grove of trees here with kind of some flexible seating in that area. And this option we estimated would require about 86 stalls, and this concept right now is showing 85, so we're pretty close there. So we wouldn't need a lot of additional parking for this concept. This graphic shows some of the facilities that are proposed on the designs. So here's an image of the covered sports court, what that could look like. Obviously pickleball and exercise stations, the nature play features. You can see they're a little different looking than typical playgrounds. Hammock Park game tables. And these options, some of those actually came out of one of the other options we explored, but I left them on the website, so I didn't want to present a different graphic tonight. But looking at costs for both of these options, they came in fairly similar. I think this, so option A, where we retain part of the building, that one cost the most at 10.2 million. And again, there's some of those seismic upgrades that are required for the media center area, the oldest portion that we would be retaining, and then just demolition and that sort of thing on the building, but in making it into great functional shape for the future uses. Again, maybe just upgrading the existing restroom and pavilion could reduce the cost from what's shown here. And like I said, these are just kind of, this process was to give us a sense for, spatially, what can we fit? What might it cost to build out a site of this size, and to a certain level of activity. And so this gives us at least a starting point to start the design process. And typically, in a process like that, we would take, we take public input and we go back and do another revision. So this is, these are never the final designs. It's always some possible combination, or maybe one is heavily favored, but I just wanted to let you know that these are not intended to be final designs. So I guess, do we want to turn it over to Mayor Brunst for?
Yes, Mayor, and I'll pull up your concept design right now.
And while you're pulling that up, for all those that
idea-
are making comments, we will address those, of course, once this presentation is done. I appreciate those, and feel free to continue to ask questions and provide comments in the chat feature.
So I've received a lot of emails, as has the rest of the council, from many in the community and neighborhoods. And so I've tried to put together a park that would not only be a local park, but a destination park, and doing it from the comments that I've received. So there's 21 features. I would like to start out by saying that I would change the name of the park to the Hillcrest Heritage Park to celebrate the heritage of the city of Orem. And I'll bring that up a little bit further as I go along. So if you'll go with me as to each number, and then look on the diagram as to where that number is, and I'll explain what I'm looking at. One thing that I heard from the neighbors is they definitely want walking paths. They want nice areas to just peruse and relax and enjoy the area. So this one, starting out with number 1 there, is I would put in a duck park that could possibly be used with a retention pond availability to it. Put in some very nice trees around it. I would have a river area, a rock little creek number 2 there that would go to the other end of that area. And it would go by number 5, which is a gazebo, and make it a really pretty white lighted gazebo. We could have lights on it at night. 3 and 4 would be a walkway around there. Now in that area, I would plant some peach trees, not a lot, but just some apple trees and some cherry trees to commemorate the heritage of what Orem has been and what it's come from. So this would be a very nice leisurely walking area that everybody could enjoy. I would have benches under the trees. I would have a couple of tables in there that people can sit on, make it shaded areas, make it really very nice. I think that's something that we haven't seen before that would be really fun. Number 6 there is a futsal court, and we would put that in for the kids. I think a lot of kids enjoy that, and we have one in North West Orem that seems to work well. Number 7 would be a basketball court, but not on asphalt. It would be a paved fenced basketball court with lights that could be used. One thing I've heard from many neighbors is they don't want to lose their green space. When we put in pickleball courts up there at Sharon Park, we were going to put them in right in the middle of the green space. And all the neighbors said, please do not do that. Put it in the southwest corner. So number 8 is green space. It's big enough to have a full baseball field. I would not necessarily put in a baseball diamond as such, but we would have a brand new backstop and have it set up that you could play baseball, you could play football, you could play soccer, you could play lacrosse. so that the neighbors surrounding that area can go recreate with their kids. And that's one thing that they've been very adamant about, is they want to keep green space. Well, that green space is there, and it'd be a great place to use. Number 9 is a restroom. That restroom is actually in good condition. A little refurbishment would be fine, but I don't think it needs to be torn down and replaced. Number 10 is the pavilion. The roof is in excellent condition. The benches are in very good condition. Great area. Again, we don't need to rebuild it, maybe just clean it up a little. Number 11 would be the East Playground. The equipment there is not in good condition. The swings are not great, so I would replace the swings and replace all of the playground equipment, as we have done in Bonneville, Cascade, Northridge, other places, with state-of-the-art new equipment. And I think we could make it really nice. And it would be more for the bigger kids than the smaller kids. Number 12, the tennis court is there, but the surface needs to be refinished. A new net needs to be put on there. And it also, we need lights. But it has fencing. It's a good size. It'd be nice to have a tennis court that people could enjoy and could use. 13 is the parking. So as I've looked at how we put the park together, we can actually put parking in enough to handle the people that would be coming. So I've allotted 232 parking stalls with 7 ADA stalls. And if you go, for example, up to Palisades Park to their splash pad when they have their soccer going, their parking lot's pretty full. So I think having that many parking spaces would be a real benefit if we're having this many activities on there. Number 14, I have 16 pickleball courts. This can be adjusted, but this would allow for having a pickleball facility similar to Spanish Fork and St. George, and both of those are kept very busy. You can always change a pickleball court out to something else later. So it's not like you're stuck for life, but right now it's very popular, and I believe that we'd actually fill those up. If you'll notice at 14, right at the very front, there's a little square next to the parking lot. That is the arch coming into the building, into the Hillcrest School. I would keep that arch. I would put the new name on there of Hillcrest Heritage Park. And through that arch, you would walk through to get to the pickleball courts, but you'd also walk through to 15, which would be the gym and the kitchen. So I would only keep the gym and the kitchen, and I would demolish all the other buildings, including the media center. The gym and the kitchen, first of all, have their own HVAC system. So they are not tied into the boiler system of the rest of the school. They are in good condition. The gym is about a 3-quarter gym. That could be used for wedding receptions, city activities, community get-togethers. The kitchen is one of a kind. It is wonderful and beautiful and can be used for a lot of different activities. So that's a real gem, the kitchen and the gym together to hang on to, that we can go ahead and schedule with the residents, and I think they would really like it. On 16, that is an improved West playground for the smaller children. So there's differences between the playgrounds. I would put the smaller children right there. 17 would be a brand new pavilion for the mothers and whatnot to sit, watch kids at their playground at the same time they can watch kids over at the splash pad. 18 is new restrooms. 19 is something you probably, most of you have never heard of. But anyway, it's called a Gaga Pit. So it's like dodgeball, only it's Gaga ball. And basically what you have is about a 2-foot perimeter around the outside of a 20-foot diameter circle. And people will take their balls in there like a dodgeball or any other kind of ball. And you push the ball against people with your hands. You don't kick it to hit them. So it allows little kids to have a lot of fun, move around. You can look it up on the internet. It's an up and coming thing that a lot of places have and are putting in place, and the kids love it. Number 20 is another kind of interesting concept, and that would be a small kids skate park. So we have a beautiful skate park over by our fire station number 3, but I've spent a lot of time there with my kids, but it's really for bigger kids. In Phoenix, they have a small kids skate park where the younger kids that are 3, 4, 5, 6 can actually run around on their small little bikes, and they really, really enjoy it. So we're keeping the small kid area together over here with about 4 or 5 different activities that would be, I think, a lot of fun for the residents. Number 21 would be a splash pad. So I would make it a circle with 3 rings, make it with colored lights. And you could also have spray devices. They have spray snakes that go up in the air that you can spray down, and could be a really fun area. So the kids could have a lot of fun, you know, during the Gaga ball, during the playground, during the splash pad over here. And it's usually the smaller kids that are enjoying the splash pad. So I believe that this gives us a concept of a lot of different activities, plenty of parking. You could have pickleball tournaments. We could have movie nights at the gym. We've got a tennis court. We've got a futsal court. We've got a river walk. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So, and I can get the costs for you later. I didn't have time to put them together as I was designing this. And this would be our, like I say, our Hillcrest Heritage Park. And that's all I've got, unless there's questions.
Thanks, Mayor. Stephen, do you want to help us kind of walk through the different comments and questions that have been coming in the chat?
Yep, we're ready to get started on that. Well, appreciate all those commentators. As you've been going, we've had a lot of questions and comments coming in. I will read all of them in, and obviously some of them are just statements. Others maybe have a question kind of embedded in the statement, so please feel free to jump in and answer those. But others are just questions. First, planned completion date. Melva Gifford asked for the planned completion date of this park.
So I'll go ahead and take the first attempt at that question. So I'll just reiterate that we're very early in the process. So we're just in the concept design part of this. We are excited to try and get a design put together so that we can begin to finalize budgets and then look to how to pay it. But we have already been trying to think of different ways that we might put the funds together to develop the park. But so I think that the design process will still and decision-making process will still go on into the next few months, and then the process to put together kind of construction designs and bid out and finalize budget, that'll take a handful of months, and then total construction would be another probably about 18 months from there. So I think that regardless of the design that is come to, I would foresee it taking upwards of a couple of years to completely get done.
Thanks, Bren. Just a comment from Sissy Rasmussen. I love the connectors to University, I think University Parkway. I couldn't see those before. I couldn't see those when I looked at this before, so thank you. They love that connection. Sam Lentz, the main reason I joined this meeting was to urge City to reduce the number of pickleball courts. No more than 8, please. I'd love to see a better mix of uses, especially with multi-purpose areas. Once you build pickleball courts, we're stuck with pickleball courts, even if or when the popularity of a relatively new sport dies down. If there's a desire to develop that space, I'd love to see a couple futsal courts as well. We now have so many pickleball courts throughout the city, including at least one year-round commercial facility that recently opened up in Orem. Let's not make the same mistake we did with racquetball in the fitness center 40 years ago by investing a large percentage of the facility into a single purpose. obviously, if there's any comments on that, we can. Sissy Rasmussen, I agree with Sam. This has been the most common response when I ask neighbors and my own teens, too many pickleball courts. Jonathan, I completely agree. We need to preserve more of the open grass rather than pave over it. Sam Lentz, if we kept the building, are there other groups like Boys and Girls Clubs that could use a facility like that for after school programs?
So I can maybe take a first stab, and then Lisa, maybe you could help with, what you're seeing more on a regional, state, and kind of general level. But we have been receiving a lot of requests to essentially try to see if we could fit in a tournament type level pickleball facility. So some have referred to the pickleball arena down at Little Valley Park in St. George as a point of reference. We have added 6 pickleball courts at Sharon Park, and then I think 4 pickleball courts at Bonneville Park, and those have been heavily used. One thing that makes pickleball so attractive from a city perspective or a community building perspective is that people of all ages are using it. We are aware of the private pickleball business that went in, but I think there's a charge to use that facility, and so the idea would be that this adding something like that to the park would be more accessible and kind of more on the recreation type level where everyone could come and enjoy. Lisa, anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, and to Sam's question about the building and other groups that may be able to use that facility, that's definitely something that we talked about when we were working on these concepts. The idea of having this flexible space that can be used not only for city recreation programming, but for maybe outside recreation groups, or like you're saying, the Boy Scouts or the Boys and Girls Clubs, those sorts of events. And that's one of the reasons that we thought it might be helpful to keep the media center to open up some of those other options if you decided to go that route. And we're also seeing kind of in a lot of the master planning that we're doing around the region right now that people and communities are looking to put in really flexible spaces. So they're not trying to kind of restrict themselves and pigeonhole themselves by the uses that they're planning for. They're kind of trying to keep their options open for the future. And that's the intent of keeping the buildings, to kind of keep it multi-use.
And
Ben, this is Terry Peterson. I walked into the private facility the other day and met with Mike, who's the owner, and asked him his feelings about what's being planned for the park. He's very supportive. And there's such a demand for pickleball. And like Bren's saying, that's a little different market where you supportive of the Hillcrest concept. And so that was good.
And then in terms of the futsal part of it too, where we've shown kind of these multi-sport courts that Lisa was talking about. So one of the sports that could be accommodated with those would be futsal, but in addition to other court sports. So we would stripe it with that in mind.
Okay, well, let's appreciate those answers. Again, if you feel like you haven't gotten enough, feel free to join the next one. Let's just move through the next question. This is a statement. I hope you don't have to charge a fee. I hope I'm reading this right. I hope you don't have to charge a fee to use a room like the Orem Library does. So hoping that space is free to use. Jonathan says, it seems like the needs of the community within walking distance of the park are being ignored in favor of making this a venue for people from other parts of the city to enjoy. So a comment about local needs versus regional needs and kind of weighing those.
Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think, there's excitement about essentially the amount of use going from 1.85 acres now to 9.3. And typically parks of this size tend to fall under our more of a citywide type of standard or level of park. Yeah, so that's kind of my initial thought on that, of why we're trying to, I guess, find a balance between what the neighbors immediately adjacent to the park want and what other city members are asking for as well. Lisa?
Yeah, and I think that's why we've tried to incorporate, you know, the walking paths and a lot of pavilions and kind of some of those passive uses. And I mean, I guess this second concept, I would say, definitely doesn't have as much of the wide open lawn area like that first concept, where we keep part of the building that there's that large green in front of the building. And so that's a little bit more of a flexible space. But and that's, you know, that's also why we're taking public input right now for sure, you know, to find out what uses, you know, we're missing in this and what, you know, what people want to see. So that's definitely still open. These are definitely not set in stone.
I think it may also help to answer the question, to have Carl Hurst, our rec director, speak to maybe some of the demand that he's been seeing for, well, the different uses that we have included in the park design so far.
Oh, I mean, I get tremendous requests for pickleball. It is extremely popular. We're a little bit behind the curve. It's been nationwide for quite a few years. It's new to Utah and especially new to Orem. The walking path with the exercise is something people have talked to me about. We still get a few requests about tennis. The indoor facility, I mean, we are short indoor gym space, so that's a space that I think is lacking in Orem. I think there's lots of things we can do in the building, from cultural events to reading to cooking, performance stage. I mean, all of those have come up.
Great. Let's appreciate those. Let's continue on. There's a statement just that the pickleball courts that the city does have are constantly busy with people waiting. There's a huge need for more, and the city knows this. Spanish Fork has a location with 16 courts, and in the evenings it is packed with people waiting. Next comment, Cynthia Nabel, we also need a splash pad for children. Justin, as a nearby resident, I also agree that there's not much interest in having pickleball be the focus of our park, at least for me. I just want a normal park, something similar to Nielsen's Grove. Replace most or all of the courts with a splash pad or other water feature. Another just kind of maybe not so many pickleball courts, another maybe 8 to 10, and then include a splash pad. A statement about pickleball requires a lot of other equipment that many kids and teens in the neighborhood likely won't have. Comment, love the idea of the covered flex use court. A comment, I also think many people have hammocks, so I would cut the hammocks. Maybe Lisa, talk about Hammock Parks and kind of the demands or things you're seeing in that, as far as that. That isn't something we currently have in one of our current parks, so that's new to many citizens.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the idea that, especially for teens, it seems to sometimes be hard to find activities that they like to do in a park. You know, the little kids sometimes go on the playground, but the older kids don't always go on the playground. And so I think the Hammock Park and the nature play in particular tend to be geared more towards teens in this park, these park designs. And the idea is that, you know, maybe they could get together with friends, they bring their hammocks to the park, and they just can kind of hang out and with their friends while their family's off maybe doing other things, their younger siblings. It's just, it doesn't have to be here. You know, again, it's just that idea that providing a new use that isn't somewhere else in the community already. And again, it's not something that would have permanent hammocks there. People bring their own to put up. But just kind of throwing an idea out there.
Okay. Great. Somebody's saying, I'd prefer the pickleball be in a more central area of the city with bigger spaces around it and existing parking. The neighborhood is not easy to get into and out of. We do not need hammocks, vagrancy problem, too many pickleball courts. How long, again, knowing this is a concept, how long would you look at likely for a perimeter of the walking area?
Hugh, do you remember? I thought we did some takeoffs on that. I was thinking it was about a half mile on the box.
I think the loop around was about a quarter mile.
Oh, quarter mile. Okay.
Okay, so about a quarter mile. A comment from Greg Carlisle. Pickleball is growing in popularity, but it's also a fad. Maybe fewer pickleball courts and more open grass space. These questions started to come up with when the mayor's presentation was up. With the location of that baseball field, a lot of foul balls would go onto one of the busiest roads in the state. I like this better, but maybe still less pickleball courts. Somebody just, why do we need more pickleball courts? We have some at others. We want open green space. We don't need fad courts. No baseball diamond is a comment. A good number 8, kind of a multi-purpose space. I wouldn't recommend having parking spots right on the other side of the baseball field where they can get hit by baseballs. Melva Gifford says, I hope we can eat fresh fruit. The bathroom at Hillcrest literally only got a new floor. Graffiti is still in place on the backside of the structure, and on the inside, they've had graffiti that has been there for years. Don't say that those bathrooms have been revamped and are in great shape. Another comment, I think parking would be better around and not in the middle of the park. This is again, the mayor's proposal. As a playground guard at the last school there, balls are going over the wall was a constant problem. That was the least of the problems there, however. What I heard, another comment, what I heard when he said we can change out the courts later was a lot of money. Another question, another comment, with young kids, I really don't like the idea of building a huge parking lot in the center and then fitting in a few amenities around the outside. Let the park itself be the central focus, safely walkable for young kids, and fit the parking in and around the outside. Another comment about it just is about pickleball. Is it going to be around in 10 to 20 years? Given the number of pickleball comments, I'm going to summarize those. If there's anything new I see, I'll bring those up. But more frustrations about that. There's many soccer teams and families that use the existing open space. A comment, no closed building, in my opinion. A comment, we have many local residents who use that for soccer fields. We need open space, not pickleball courts. A comment, we need a larger maintenance area for this larger area with new features. The current one is terribly inadequate. Having the young kids playground on the opposite end of the park, separated by a huge parking lot from the playground for larger kids, is a disastrous scenario for families with kids of different ages. So this is speaking to, in Landmarks design, you had the co-located the playgrounds. The mayors had them separated by a parking lot. Yes, keep the playgrounds close is another comment. A fear that any closed buildings will allow for transients to camp there overnight. We had people sleep at the back of the school and use power from the building. I've seen homeless at the park. For the facilities, here's a question. What would the fees look like for the different facilities? And then another question following up to that, would the courts be rented or would you just sign up to use them?
If we've got Reed Price on the line, maybe he could help us with how we manage our pickleball courts. I thought I saw him earlier. Sorry about that. Or Carl.
Yeah, pickleball is a very social sport. You don't go on for an hour and then reserve an hour. You go on for a game, and there's a rotation system. You put your racket in the rotation, and then you play a game, and then it just rotates out. So you might be on there for 15 minutes and then out for 15 and on for 15. So we don't reserve them. It just has its own social rotation system.
And then the other thing I'd say on fees is that it hasn't been completely, we're early enough in the process that it hasn't been completely fleshed out, but I think there would be some maintenance costs and probably need for some amount of staffing if the building were to, a portion of the building were to remain. But the thought would be that that we'd kind of use something of a framework that we do with our pavilion rental process, or even just, renting what will be new community spaces, community rooms in our new fitness center, and use that as something of a pattern or standard for how we might use the building at Hillcrest Park.
Bren, I am here. Just to add to what Carl said, we set some basic rules, and the pickleball players kind of just work it out amongst themselves as to how to cycle through. So we don't rent them out at this point.
A comment here. So kind of moving on, Mayor, maybe you can speak to this one. What would the cost for the mayor's plan be? It should not be seriously considered at this time because it was not presented earlier and residents have had no time to review it as they did with the other concepts.
Well, I would hope that it would receive consideration. We are working out the costs. When I went through it before, it appeared to be about 6 million, 6.5 million. But we're getting all the costs in together. So,
Mayor, maybe for the public, when you say we, who are you working with to get those costs?
So I'm working with a architect, which is Trees by Design. They're a landscape architect. And then I'm gathering the costs myself and also from Landmarks Concepts there.
Okay. A comment, the mayor has some really unique options and fun places for residents. Lene Millett, I agree with Sam regarding the pickleball courts. Let's add a splash pad or more green space for kids to run. A comment, the courts at Sharon are used heavily for about 3 hours of the day. The rest of the day it is wasted space. More comments about so much of the pickleball courts. It's a small neighborhood. I'd say just hate to see so much of the park taken by parking. Another one, mayor's plan, head and shoulders above the others with one amendment, less pickleball, more grass. Another one, if people want to host a tournament at that business with 15 courts, they can pay for that use. We don't need to use our park space for that many courts. I like the idea of using more of the building. It would be rented out to offset the cost. Room to rent, the arts can be used for dance, music, drama, community cultural center, weddings, reunions, etc. I'd like to see the gym available as a first priority for Orem Rec Center basketball programs, practices, and other Orem programs versus outside groups. With open grass, you can play a myriad of games. Once you put down concrete, you're limited as to what you can do. People have imaginations. Another comment, dang straight, Jonathan. They don't give one crap about what we at Hillcrest people want. Another one, it's important to remember that this neighborhood has a lot of multifamily housing, apartments, duplexes, fourplexes with young, low-income families. They don't have yards, and this park has served that purpose. Pickleball doesn't. Agree with the comment from Jonathan. The 1.8 to 9.3 acre comment shows the ignorance of the way we're using that space now. The school property is being used as public space. The playgrounds and grass aren't just for school kids, they're for the whole community. I've had some messages. This is from Jeff Lamson. I've had some messages today from citizens that are not able to participate this evening. I want to make sure their thoughts are expressed. Their requests are for more outdoor basketball courts. Apparently there are some in Vineyard and they're very popular. Also, the skateboard park for youngsters. Just another comment, the building being critical for a community center type of place that is in walking distance. And another just play for more open space and more walking paths. With the access to University Parkway, there'll be a lot of unmanageable traffic. We already have homeless problems here. Another comment, we don't want pavilions. We don't want pickleball courts. We want places to play on grass. We have so many apartments with no space to play on grass. We need open spaces. Another one, more open space, grass, please. Another one, Nielsen's Grove is amazing. This is what this park needs to be. Another one, sadly, the dog poop was a serious problem on the property. Cleaning it up daily so students didn't step in it was exhausting. Another, we don't need a hammock park. People go to Sarah all the time in Hammock. You don't need a designated spot for it. Another one, I'd rather clean up dog poop than have all that pickleball. I cleaned up 2 messes before my soccer practice today. Another, no Hammock Park, but put in frisbee golf or something. Another comment, good point, but the pickleball courts put the pickleball courts at Sarah. They have numerous open fields and massive parking lots capable of holding the cars. Another comment, I love the walking path around the outside. Could you put in mile markers and design it wide enough for runners? Maybe there's a question in there. Would you put up some type of markings for distance, and could it be wide enough for runners and walkers to share space?
On my concept, sure. We do that at other parks. That would be part and parcel of it.
And I think that question, Mayor, can be answered about probably all of the concepts. We don't have to pit them against each other.
That is correct.
And then a splash pad would be great water feature and good for the kids. Another question, my concern is that there's not enough for children. A splash pad and a rope climb should be considered. The rope climb in Saratoga Springs is constantly used. Another comment, we've had a baseball diamond there for years. Another comment, frisbee golf does sound awesome. If we are watering more grass, let's produce plants that give us produce. Another one, pickleball is important for the ever-growing senior population, like the mayor's age and older. Another comment, fruit trees would be amazing as community space and would go along with the Heritage Center. Hammocking is fun, but we can plant more trees that require less watering. Another, I love disc golf, but we do have other places to play in that area. And if you did an abbreviated course, you'd want to make sure it's kept far from University Parkway. Don't want any stray discs flying into traffic. Another.
Hey, Stephen.
Please, Lisa.
Can I just chime in real quick on the disc golf? That one thing to consider when you're locating disc golf is those errant discs. And we've had incidents in other communities where people have been seriously injured by those. And so you have to be really careful about having that in an area where you're not going to have conflict with uses. So you have to have a big enough space where one of those discs may not go sailing off into adjacent trails or, playgrounds, things like that. So that's just something to consider.
Great, Lisa. Thank you so much for that insight. Next, pickleball is neither a new or a fad sport. It started in 1965. It's been growing every year. If you don't play the sport, I understand the comments for fewer courts. If you enjoy the sport, there are not nearly enough courts in our community. We need a quality facility in Orem. Another comment, we have a quality facility. It is indoors as well. Another, can we try to keep as many mature trees as possible? I want to enjoy shade now, not in 20 years. Great question there about the mature trees and what we'll be able to keep and what we would have to get rid of.
And that all comes down to what the final design ends up being like. We didn't want the location of the existing trees to necessarily restrict the exploration of ideas. And there's always a possibility of bringing in a tree spade if there are some that are, that you want to try and save, but you typically only have a 50-50 chance of that tree surviving. So we would definitely love to keep as many mature trees as possible, but we also want to make sure we, meet the needs of the neighborhood and the community with facilities.
So Lisa, maybe if I can summarize, your approach is let's try to keep as many as we can while fitting the amenities that we need into that park, but recognizing that some generally have to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, there's a lot of beautiful trees out there. So
now what about understanding that they won't be mature trees, but replacing trees that you take out? Do you kind of have a philosophy or a ratio that you use? Do you try to do a 1-to-1? How do you look at that?
Well, I think we're definitely showing more trees on the site than are out there right now. So I'm not too concerned about that, but obviously they're not going to have the maturity and the tree canopy that are out there right now. So.
Great, Lisa. Okay.
I can probably speak for our urban forester that we would include him in that process of trying to figure out what we could keep or what we could move or not.
Perfect. Let's see. I played basketball in Oregon on a basketball court that was partly covered like a carport that was used year round. Not sure if that would work as our weather with our weather, but it was amazing. So it covered kind of basketball court or sports court. Spike ball is up and coming and needs grass as well. This is a comment. Any Hillcrest Park really needs new and updated playground, new tennis court in its existing spots, new truly updated bathrooms, not supposed updates the mayor claimed happened, revamping the existing basketball courts, tear down the school. Next, I think we need a splash pad or water feature, basketball courts, pickleball, walking trail, open space, and new bathrooms. Mayor, I want to give you obviously just that opportunity. People have made comments about the bathrooms really not being as revamped as maybe you suggested. Do you want to just clarify your thoughts on that?
So my suggestion was that the bathrooms, the building, et cetera, are in good condition. The bathrooms themselves, the graffiti, that all needs to be updated, cleaned up. I would put in new toilets, new lights, but the building itself is pretty solid. So I don't think we need to build a new building on the east side. We would on the west side.
So the idea of just gutting it and kind of replace it, but keeping the structure.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. Another one, make the footprint of the existing school grass, make the footprint of the existing school grass and then call it good. Another one, let's see, just kind of some banter between people. The small park there currently has mature trees. The front of the school also has beautiful mature trees. Along the back play area by the current basketball courts, there is a row, about 10, of smaller trees. There are no other trees on the property. We have had a baseball diamond, but I've asked for 2 or 3 bases to add first, second, and third. Or I've asked for 3 bases to add first, second, and third, and they haven't. The diamond literally only has a home plate. Just more proof to how the city of Orem shows they respect the Hillcrest neighborhood citizens. Reed, maybe could you, or Jim, or I know you're on the call as well, maybe speak to how in any of our city parks, how we generally treat backstops as well as far as putting in full baseball fields with bases.
Reed, this is.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Reed.
Well, we have several. We have complexes for the organized leagues at Lakeside Sports Park, at Windsor Park, and at City Center Park. Those are primarily for the organized leagues. And there are many other fields that have the more passive baseball, pickup baseball opportunities where there's just a backstop. And that goes similar to what the mayor described when he was presenting. It provides green space, the ability to play other sports as well when we don't have a diamond in place and bases there. At those parks, we would expect citizens to come and put their own bases down. I know when we play kickball as a family, we usually use paper plates or something like that to mark where the bases are. But that is kind of a multi-use field in most of the parks where we have those baseball backstops.
Yeah, Reed is correct on that. Northridge Park, Cascade Park are exactly like Hillcrest. They just have a backstop and a home plate, and it's mostly used by the local schools who will just come over and throw something down while they play a game of kickball.
Great. And Jim, next time you find 3 paper plates that look like bases as litter in a park, we know where that came from.
Okay, I'll blame. Okay.
Okay, we're kind of wrapping up with time. I think we've had a lot of comments. This is a great one to end on. What is the next step in this process? This is from Sissy Rasmussen. I see a lot of comments about reducing the pickleball courts and making more open space. Are we going to redo and present again? Are we going to send out a targeted survey? Are we going to ask the Hillcrest neighbors what their priorities are? Who can speak to just kind of the next steps from here after these comment meetings?
I can briefly chime in here and then maybe Bren can join as well. So what we want to do is still leave that website open for comments. And Bren and I were talking about kind of when to wrap that up. So if you go to, you can go directly to the comments at oremhillcrestpark.org, and you can look at the concepts and provide, there's a comment form you can fill out. The mayor's concept is not on there though, but you're also welcome to fill in comments on there. As far as this immediate process goes, we want to continue to get additional feedback through that form. And then we do need to provide a cutoff date so that we can actually start digesting all of these comments and summarize not only what's come out of this meeting, but through the website, we've probably had close to 250 comments already. So I would say maybe we give people through the weekend to kind of finish, providing direct comments on these concepts that you've seen here tonight. And then maybe Bren can chime in on where he wants to go from there.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't speak up before. It wasn't letting me unmute. But yeah, I think we want to make sure that we're taking into account all of the comments that have been coming in over the last week, plus during this meeting, and try to summarize that as best we can, and then try to apply what we're seeing from that into this park design. And also, there may be some good ideas that if they don't fit at Hillcrest, maybe they could fit at another park as well. And kind of, I think we want to revisit too how this all compares to our Parks Master Plan, where that's citywide, and we're going through an updating process with that. And ultimately, we would need to bring back these updates and these summaries back to our mayor and council and see if we're interpreting and digesting everything well, and then define next steps from there. I just say, again, we love the feedback. We want to be accessible and transparent. I'm sure that we'll continue to get additional emails as we go along as well. But kind of like Lisa said too, we're trying to balance that with also ultimately getting a new park updated and built, and so moving along in the decision-making processes as well. So we'll continue to try and strike that balance. But again, love the excitement. So glad that the city of Orem has much more park space in a pretty much built out city. It's pretty exciting, and so we understand all the extra interest and passion with this new open space.
Bren, Mayor here. I was just going to mention, we'll put the concept C that I presented tonight on our website, and then also put the cost with it. So.
Great.
Okay. The only one more question that's come in, we have a couple more minutes. What happens to the Centennial Garden that was planted by several kids in this neighborhood? Can anybody speak to the Centennial Garden that was planted by several kids in this neighborhood?
Reed or Carl or Jim, are you aware of that? I'll definitely make a note.
I've never heard of it. That's the first I've heard of this. Was it a school project, perhaps?
The person that's going from Christie's iPad, if you could raise your hand, I can unmute you and maybe you can explain that one a little better while we have a couple minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I am not
Christy,
sure if they're referring to something in the park or at the school.
So Christy is on. She can speak to that a little better.
Yes, so I've been in this neighborhood my entire life. In 1997, they had us plant that garden out in front of the school with all by the school sign out by the road. And they made it a little walking path through it. It was planted by a lot of kids that some are still around here, some have moved away, but we kind of regard it as a, heritage. So it might go well with the mayor's plan, but it's just important to those of us that help plant it. It's shaped like the state of Utah.
Okay, that'll help us find that, Chrissy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's a little overgrown right now, but
Okay, no, we will find that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody joining. We're going to continue on to another one that starts at 6:30. So anybody that wants more information, or if you didn't feel like your questions were answered, please feel free to jump on that. Again, go to orem.org/Hillcrest Park, and you'll see the link for the second meeting as well. So to give us time to go there and get that one started and start accepting all the citizens, we're going to call this one good. We're going to download all of these comments, and these will all be forwarded on to our consultants and to staff so that we can make sure that every comment is read. And so if we missed anybody's, we apologize, but we appreciate you spending some time tonight. And for those that continue on with us, we look forward to seeing you on the next meeting in about 12 minutes. To all of those that participated, to our city council, staff, consultants, thanks so much for spending the last hour and a half here with us. We know we'll spend another hour and a half together in just a few minutes, but we know this is a big commitment of time and of energy, and we know how personal that this property, this school, and this community is to so many of us and to so many of you. And we look forward to doing something really neat here that we believe will make an impact on the community in a real positive way. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next meeting for those that are going to be there.